Good morning, everyone. My name is Maya Luria with TMC for Seniors, and today we're going to be talking about diet myths debunked. I have Katelyn Barker here with me today. She is a registered dietitian over at the University of Arizona Nutritional Sciences Department. So she's a professor over there, and we're so happy that Katelyn is here. She's going to share with us all about diets and what you need to know. And also, she is helping us with our nutrition consults that we provide over here at TMC. So I'm so glad you're here today in person, Katelyn. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Thank you to everyone online, and thank you for those in person with me today. So, the title of our discussion or our talk today is Diet Myths Debunked. And as Maya said, my name is Katelyn. I work in the Department of Nutritional Sciences at the University of Arizona as a professor there, but I'm also a trained dietitian. My email address is on this slide, so if you have any questions that you don't get answered today during the presentation, or you think of a question next week or in 6 months, feel free to reach out with my email address right there. So just a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Utah, and that's where I got my degree. I graduated and moved to Tucson 5 years ago. So when I moved here, my dream job has always been teaching, and so I was so excited to get my position at the University of Arizona. While I was working at the University of Arizona, I noticed, so the way that I was trained as a dietitian was from, we call it a weight-centric lens, or using weight as a determinant of health. And so when I started to kind of peek into some things and research and meeting other colleagues, I discovered a different approach, which just made so much sense to me. It's called a weight inclusive approach to health. And so that's the approach that I take. And I want to work through some myths with you today related to what I would call diet culture. So diet culture is all around us, just like if we were fish swimming in a sea, it's all around us in the water. And we don't really see it unless we're pulled out of the water. So it's really hard to see, but I hope today we'll kind of see some of that and suss out some of those myths that come up. Before we get going into kind of our plan today, I always like to share that health, as we talk about health, is really complex. If we think about a galaxy, there's so many stars in the galaxy. And so our health is just like that, where nutrition and movement are just one star each in the galaxy. Our body size, our food choices, those are all just one stars. So there's some parts of our health, but our health is so complex, and there are so many other stars in that galaxy. So I'll share some specific examples as we go, but I like to open that up, just some context of nutrition and movement, just one small part of our health. Okay, so today's plan, we're going to talk about 5 common myths, and these are the myths that I feel like just show up in the media, they show up in questions that we get a lot, and so we're going to talk about the myth that food is just fuel, the myth that there are good foods and bad foods, the myth that carbs are unhealthy, the myth that the best diet is X, whatever you want to fill in the blank there with, and then the myth that thinner equals healthier. So let's start off with the first one. Food is just fuel. I feel like we hear that all the time. Food is fuel. Food is fuel. And sort of going along with that, you are what you eat, right? We hear that all the time. So this is a myth because food is so much more than just fuel. Food is celebration, food is culture, food is connection, food is memories. And all of those things that food supports and provides is part of our health and health promoting too. So all foods serve a purpose. Some foods nourish our bodies, while other foods nourish our souls and create those connections. And there's so many different reasons that we eat. We eat to share experiences. We eat because it's pleasurable and it satisfies us. We eat because of emotions, either happy or sad or celebrating, or we're stressed. Eating can be a form of self-care. One of my favorite things, though, to think about is food in the form of memories. And one of the strongest memory associations we have is through taste and smell. So there's a food memory activity that you could try if you want, just on your own to kind of think about this. But I wanted to share one of my own food memories I have. Since I was little, my grandpa made bread in the bread maker, and we always called it Grandpa's bread. So every time we'd go to Grandma and Grandpa's house, it was always, can we have a piece of Grandpa's bread? And it was this big, thick, sliced piece of bread with, my grandma bought margarine. So margarine and jam, and we'd sit at the table together with Grandma and Grandpa. And so every time I have the recipe, every time I make the recipe in my own bread maker, I just love that those memories come back to me, and it reminds me and makes me think of Grandpa. Another sort of related is my family and I finally found the best chocolate chip cookie recipe. We've been on the hunt for one for a while. And so we make cookies together every Sunday in the hope that I hope my boys will grow up remembering that about their mom and, have that memory together of us spending time together on Sundays doing that. So that's something that you can do is this memory activity. So consider a memory you have about food. What was the food or dish that was made? What was the occasion? Where were you? How old were you? Who made the dish? What did you feel, and how do you connect with this memory now, if at all? And doing this, creating food memories and doing these things with food, like I said, is supportive of health and well-being. All right, myth number 2. There are good foods and bad foods. So we also hear this all the time. And sometimes I think we don't really realize the morality that we place on food, good and bad. So I put some examples here of some, sometimes we call good foods clean or natural, or I'm being good today. And then bad foods as sinful or indulgent, or we call ourselves bad for eating a certain food. So it's normal for us to put food in binary categories. In fact, as humans, we're really good at categorizing things, and that's how we survive, is by categorizing things. But the truth is that all foods have different nutritional attributes, and there's no food that's inherently good or bad. And sometimes when we place that morality on food, we think of it as good and bad. That can invoke that feeling of shame or guilt towards consuming different foods. And shame and guilt, that feeling in of itself isn't health promoting. Usually doesn't help us take care of ourselves. And so that's something to kind of be aware of. Healthy different is nuanced, and it looks different for everyone. So I have a question. Which is healthier, a hamburger or an apple?
The hamburger, no, just.
Most of us would say the apple, right?
Yeah.
We'd say the apple is healthier. But the truth is that we really, diet culture helps us assign which food is healthier, but it's not necessarily that one is healthier than the other. They just serve different purposes, and they have different nutrition compositions. So the apple is crispy, it's refreshing, it's sweet, it has fiber, but it's also probably not going to fill us up very much. Whereas the burger is going to be sustaining, it's going to keep us full. We might enjoy it with friends. And so each of these foods serves a different purpose. So what to do instead of assigning food good or bad? So give yourself permission to eat what you want without judgment and pay attention to how the food makes you feel. Nutrition and self-care practices should make you feel empowered, energetic, and satisfied. So if we're going back to maybe some messages that diet culture gives us of we should just eat fruits and vegetables, maybe that makes us feel good, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe it doesn't help us feel that energetic and satisfied feeling. So really focusing on how we feel after eating certain foods. I love this activity or just sort of idea of value-based eating. So if anyone is familiar with ACT, it's a therapy modality. It stands for Acceptance, Commitment, Therapy. I might have said that wrong because now I'm in front of people. But it's about aligning your actions with values. So aligning our actions with values is really powerful, especially when we think of our health. And we can do this with food too. So instead of looking for outside validation about what we're eating, we can ask ourselves what feels good for our body and what aligns with our values. So there's different values that fall in, I think, 8 domains here. We have values related to relationships and marriage, family values, parenting values, friendship, contributing to community, education, work and career, physical well-being, recreation and fun, and spirituality values. And there's so many values. The list on the right here is just an example of a few handfuls of values. But really going through these different domains and deciding what is the most important to me, what do I value in life? And then that can be used to choose, health promoting behaviors or set boundaries, but it can also be used to think about the way that we eat too. So for example, let's say I value adventure. It's one of my things that I want to get out of life and that really is important to me. So when I think about adventure related to food, how could that come alive for me? Maybe it's experimenting with different cooking dishes or trying different foods, being adventurous in that way. Maybe I value friendship and maybe having coffee with a friend or going to ice cream or going to lunch together is something that me and my friend like to do, and it creates connection between us. That is acting on a value that we think is really important, and that in of itself is good for our health and relates to eating at the same time, right? That connection piece. So just another way I think to kind of help us decide what's important and what's right for us. Okay, number 3. I get this question all the time. So myth number 3 is that carbs are unhealthy. And they are public enemy number 1. It seems like we hear people say, stay away from white foods, carbs cause inflammation, or fruit has too much sugar. And if you remember in, maybe the 80s and the 90s, it was sort of fat that was villainized. And now I think in today's world, we've kind of moved into the carb world. And so that's just kind of an example of how diet culture changes over time to try to get us on, the new program or the new plan or whatnot that we might not necessarily need. So when we do think about carbs are our body's preferred energy source. So they're vital to life, and it's actually our brain's preferred fuel source. Our brain runs solely off of carbs. So the body needs a constant supply of carbohydrates throughout the day. And that's why some folks who go on a low carb diet or don't have carbs in their diet feel fuzzy, they can't think as well. It's because we don't have that energy to help sustain us and make us through the day. Also, when we make a food off limits, that can make us think about that food more often. We always want what we can't have, right? And that is true about nutrition, but it's our body's biological way of saying, I need more energy. I need more carbohydrates to fuel me through the day. If you've ever been hungry and you feel like your blood sugar is crashing, you're just hungry, the first thing we usually want is a carbohydrate, whether that's like a candy bar or just something quick, right? And that's our body's biological way of saying we need a quick source of energy because we're low on energy at this point. And carbohydrates have nutrients that are protective against disease. And I think we forget that sometimes. Things like whole grains have fiber and vitamins and minerals that are helpful to protect against certain diseases, or helpful for managing certain diseases like diabetes and blood sugar. So what to do instead? Eat a consistent amount of carbohydrates through the day, and choose a variety. So grains, cereal, fruit, yogurt, milk. And what you can do is pair carbohydrates with protein to help the body absorb the carbohydrates a little more slowly. Well, protein, fat, or fiber. I shouldn't leave the other two out. So foods with fiber would be fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, and beans. Where foods with protein are animal-derived foods, so dairy, eggs, any kind of meat, and then nuts, seeds, and beans. So let's say chips sound so good, right? Chips are a source of carbohydrate, which is good, gives the body energy. We can balance it with a little bit of salsa and some guacamole, just as an example, to add some fiber and some fat to help the carbs from the chips absorb more slowly and give us more energy over time. Let's say we really want a slice of bread. You want a slice of grandpa's bread. We can add peanut butter and jelly to help add some protein and some fat to the bread to help the carbs absorb more slowly. So just two other examples on here: bagel with cream cheese and a hard-boiled egg, or cheese and crackers with grapes. So it's all about just kind of rounding it out. And I think something that will come up later is it's about adding things in rather than subtracting, but adding nutrition to our meals and our plate. Okay, myth number 4, the best diet is blank. So X, whatever it is. I think right now the keto diet is popular. I'm trying to think what else is popular. The Mediterranean diet is popular. It used to be the Atkins diet, the South Beach diet, the DASH diet. So there's all these different diets and ways of eating. And really the myth is that there's no best diet out there. There's not one diet that is the best. Healthy eating is flexible and it's focused on the big picture rather than specific foods and specific meal plans. On the other hand, diets are usually focused on self-control, right? Rigid, they're usually focused on subtracting foods. They have a one-size-fits-all solution. So there's one meal plan that's given to everyone and focused on individual foods and meals. But really the truth is that you get to decide what is healthy for you. And that's where it comes back to that. How do certain things make you feel when you eat them? How do they align with your values and how do they connect with your bigger definition of health? So good nutrition is flexible. It comes from a place of self-care. It's focused on the big picture. It's individualized and different for every person, and it adds foods in rather than subtracting. So what to do instead? Zoom out, focusing on the big picture instead of individual food choices. Nothing bad ever happened from one meal or one snack. It's really about zooming out and looking at patterns over time. Focusing on addition, not subtraction. I remember I was seeing a client who loved orange chicken and white rice. Like that was her favorite meal. And so we talked about this, kind of going back to good and bad foods, how white rice and orange chicken was seen as a bad food. So instead of subtracting, taking out the chicken, taking out the rice, we decided to add. So can we add some vegetables, some steamed vegetables on top? Can we do a different kind of drink? Can we do like some water instead of something else that doesn't feel as hydrating? Can we add a walk after we eat this favorite meal? So instead of subtracting, taking it away, we add. So think variety. And I think our public health messaging does a great job at teaching us that we need to eat a variety of fruits and vegetables. We already know that. But of a variety of other foods too, like variety of proteins, fish, chicken, beef, a variety of fats, nuts and seeds, and carbohydrate sources. So a variety of all types of foods. And paying attention to what feels good. So that's kind of coming back to how does it feel to eat a certain food? How do certain foods affect your energy or your digestion? And then how often do you notice signs of hunger throughout the day? And can you create an environment that supports nourishment throughout the day? And how does it feel when you feed your body regularly throughout the day? Questions to ask yourself and just kind of get curious. Okay, myth number 5 is that thinner equals healthier. And this topic is really complex. I had a hard time trying to, shrink it down so we could have so much conversation on this. And really this is, sometimes rooted in diet culture and what we think is beautiful in our society or desirable, right? That thinner is always more desirable. But it also shows up in the doctor's office too, this fear of increasing size or becoming larger size. So it shows up in both places. But the truth is, when we look at research about weight and health, we often don't peek back the curtain and pull out the things that come up that really the behaviors and the things people do influence health rather than body weight itself. We often just blame size and body weight on poor health outcomes, right? We hear weight is related to high blood pressure or to diabetes, but that's not necessarily true. When we pull back and really look at whether or not weight is influencing, we see that behaviors influence health more than a person's body size does. So I love this quote by Reagan Chastain. She says, people experience weight changes without health changes and health changes without weight changes. And I just think that speaks so well to this kind of neutral place that we can look at weight and health and instead focus on things that we have 100% control over, because we technically don't have control over body size. It's mostly genetic and a product of our biology. So I went off a little bit from my bullet points, but that's okay. When we do look at weight science and see if thinner equals healthier, we see that most people don't maintain the weight loss that they achieved. And most people who lost weight end up regaining it, with a third of people regaining more than what they lost. So it kind of ends up in this yo-yo pattern is what we call it. Could be called yo-yo dieting or weight cycling. And when we take out body size from the equation and we just look at how weight cycling affects a person's health, we see that weight cycling causes things like diabetes and heart disease. So we often, I think as healthcare providers, we're saying that people who are a certain body size should lose weight to be healthier, but we're not thinking about that risk of weight cycling and how that impacts a person's health too. We also don't call out or study the effects of the stigma that comes and is associated with being in a larger body, and that folks who are in larger bodies often avoid going to the doctor. They wait longer to go to the doctor before they get medical help. And it's stressful to be in a body that society doesn't value, if that makes sense. So what can we do instead? We've already talked about this expanding our definition of health. So I'm not gonna beat a dead horse on that one. But we really want to focus on health promoting behaviors. So remember, weight is not a behavior. We want to focus on things that we have 100% control over. So it could be finding movement or exercise that we enjoy, adding more whole foods, or getting enough sleep, or adding fruits and vegetables to meals and snacks. So kind of that example of orange chicken and rice and adding vegetables. Increasing the amount of water we drink in order to stay hydrated. So again, that add, don't subtract. So that wraps up the myths, and I think we have plenty of time for questions, but I also just wanted to mention that we are hoping to open some more spots for nutrition consultations. So I've left this phone number up here if you're interested in talking with either myself or another professor at the University of Arizona. We bring students along with us. So if that's okay with you, we have a student with us so that they can kind of learn how it is working with clients. So I'll let Maya take over here.
Yeah, thank you, Katelyn. So yes, we do have, we're hoping to add some additional time slots for nutrition appointments. This is a great opportunity for our students to get involved. They're getting ready to graduate, and they're able to get that practice that they need, and they do that alongside, Katelyn will be here, or another professor to assist if they have any additional questions. And we found that it's been very valuable for everybody who has gone through that program. So we want to thank you for that collaboration. It's been wonderful. I had a couple of questions that came in. One was, what is the number one mistake you see people make when they're trying to make healthier eating habits?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is like a total 180 makeover, right? And I think we see that of like, clean out the fridge, clean out the pantry. I'm going to take away everything that I love and can't have, and we kind of demonize good foods and bad foods. And so I'd say that's the number one thing that I see. And if someone is motivated to make changes, that's not a bad thing in of itself. But what's something that's realistic and sustainable and something that we still enjoy that we can do rather than just a whole 180?
Well, and I loved how you talked about not taking away your absolute favorite food, but figuring out how to add to that, like the orange chicken example, you said, add some vegetables to it, so that you at least you can sort of balance that out. I'm also thinking maybe portion size might be something else somebody might want to consider if that was, something they're trying to figure out the balance of what's healthy and how do we fix, how do we make it healthier, right? By adding maybe the veggies. Are there also some diet and nutrition buzzwords that we should avoid when we're looking for healthier options? Like in the grocery store, I know we see a lot of different buzzwords, but which buzzwords are the ones that you really shouldn't be using?
Yeah, and maybe the audience can help me think of examples too, but I think the one that comes to mind is something that's a quick fix or promises health just from one food, right? It's not going to happen from just one food. I wish, but that's definitely not the case. So in terms of buzzwords,
Light, right? I know oftentimes we'll see the word light in, on a description. I don't know if that would be one.
All natural, that's a good one too. Yeah. Clean. Those words aren't necessarily organic. Those words are defined by the company who's making the food product, and they put that on there as a way to sell the food product to folks.
But not necessarily clean eating or necessarily light, right? I know we've had some presentations in the past on reading those labels and just making sure that you're really looking at those labels. And I know sometimes you'll look at like maybe a regular peanut butter and maybe one that they consider a light peanut butter, and you really have to compare what you're getting.
Yeah. And really thinking about that, zooming out, looking at big picture instead of individual foods. I think most of us have a sense of what is good for us and what works well for us, as opposed to, kind of what the outside is telling us to eat. So really trusting your gut and your intuition, because I feel like most folks know what that is.
The other thing I was just thinking about is I know oftentimes when people are using maybe extra virgin olive oil, there's the light version, which is really not the same in olive oil, right? So sometimes just getting to know what the differences really are is important.
Yeah.
I want to just share with everybody one last time, if you are interested in a nutrition appointment, we have a few slots that we're hoping to open up. The number is 520-324-1960 if you are interested in scheduling. And Katelyn, I want to thank you so much for being here today. I'm gonna turn it back over to you for our in-person audience, and I'll wrap up online. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Maya.
Thanks so much for being here today. We will have our next presentation tomorrow. We actually have two that are coming up. It is all about fall prevention tomorrow. So we've got medication and fall safety at 10 a.m. That is on Wednesday, September 20th. And we also have a foot and ankle issues, one step at a time, with Dr. Eric Ankle from Tucson Orthopedic. Please, he is on at 4:00 on Wednesday, September 20th as well. If you are interested in attending either of these presentations, please give us a call at 520-324-1960, and we'd be happy to get you registered. Thanks again for being here.